Halo? Halo, ada orang kah? Coba mata. Ah, ah. Mau benerin HP itu. Sebentar, gomenasai. Soto. Korei kana. Oh my god. Sometimes I'm amazed with my own settings. Kola, please. Iya, mangap ha. Soalnya ini kayak akunya goler, terus HP-nya tegak, kayak ya beginilah jadinya. Well, I guess this is fair ones. Yeah. Well, I guess this is working for now. Maaf. Nggak apa-apa. Sebenarnya ini kan hari ini mau baca Sherlock Holmes. Kalian ada yang suka Sherlock Holmes kah? Ya gitu deh. Cuma karena kan teksnya itu kan apa namanya bahasa Inggris. Jadi kalau bakalan bolak-balik ngomong bahasa Inggris sama bahasa Indonesia. Kalian sih kalau mau ngechat nggak apa-apa, ngechatnya bahasa Indonesia aja nggak masalah. Cuma emang kalau kan kemarin nyari apa namanya karya tulis yang public domain yang hak ciptanya bisa disiarin gitu ya tanpa bayar lagi gitu loh. Nah jadi Kola nyari, tapi yang di Indonesia tuh dikit banget. Terus kan Kola emang suka cerita-cerita misteri, terus cerita-cerita detektif gitu kan. Nah terus kan kalau di luar negeri ternyata ya cerita-cerita yang lama tuh masih udah banyak yang jelas gitu loh kalau mereka public domain. Di antaranya adalah itu yang bakal dibaca malam ini yang berjudul The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes. Kalian pasti udah tahu sih, soalnya kayak apa ya, banyak itunya, udah banyak movie-nya kan. Kalau kalian udah pernah baca kah sebelumnya The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes? Kalau Kola sih sejujurnya belum, kalau buku aslinya. Apa ini? Vincent, halo yang pada baru datang. Oh ya, Kola lupa nyapa. Colabanwaa semuanya, apa kabar? Semoga baik-baik aja ya. Kola juga di sini baik-baik aja. Kola sedang happy hari ini karena berhasil makan pizza. Tapi sekarang dilema karena Kola kan beli promo 2 medium pizza. Nah, sampai saat ini dari yang tadi siang apa sore dipesan, Kola baru berhasil menghabiskan 1 loyang. Berarti mungkin 1 loyang lagi buat besok kali ya. Ya bisa diangetin lah ya. Tapi ya karena itu Kola senang karena Kola sudah makan keju, Kola sudah makan yang gurih-gurih, Kola sudah makan pizza. Setelah entah berapa bulan yang gak makan pizza. Anyway, apa ini? Saatnya sapa-sapa dulu yang udah pada datang di chatbox. Yang pertama ngabsen tadi ada Caitlin. Halo Caitlin, apa kabar? Apakah kalian semua senang hari ini, malam ini? Sudah ngapain aja kah hari ini? Bisa cerita-cerita dong. Tadi pada makan apakah? Udah pada makan malam kan? Kalau juga tadi agak telat karena makan pizza dulu kayak 2 slice gitu untuk makan malam. Terus ada yang kedua yang absen, ada Biagi. Halo Biagi, Colabanwaa. Ada Kyomegi, haro. Ada Mine, halo Mine. Emerson juga, terima kasih yang sudah pada datang. Hehehe. Habis nggak tadi pizzanya? Nggak habis, belum habis. Masih ada 1 loyang lagi. Ya paling ya buat besok kali ya. Kalian kalau misalnya makan pizza muatnya berapa slice sih kalau misalnya makan kayak gituan? Kalau soalnya biasanya kayak 2 atau 3 slice tuh udah langsung kenyang sebenarnya. Sebenarnya sih ya kayak ya setengah pizza tuh sebenarnya bisa buat seharian. Kalau kolanya lagi makan banyak dikit ya ya 1 loyang buat seharian bisa. Tapi kan kalau kayak kalau suka agak makan promo hehehe. Ya jadi kayak begitu 2 loyang ya paling buat besok nggak apa-apa lah. Jadi gonta-ganti makannya hari ini sama besok makan pizza. Besoknya lagi paling makan nasi, besoknya lagi sayur lagi, terus mungkin nanti daging gitu kan kan yang satu ganti-ganti makanan, hehe. Walaupun ya jangan junk food juga sih. Kalian kalau misalnya beli pizza pada beli kemana kah, ke yang biru apa ke yang merah? Kalau beli sebenarnya lebih suka, kalau untuk pizzanya lebih suka yang biru. Hehehe. Gimana? Kita langsung baca dulu aja kali ya. Nanti kalau misalnya udah 5 paragraf atau 5 paragraf sedikitan kali ya. Ya ntar kalau misalnya udah agak berselang berapa lama baru aku baca lagi chatboxnya. Tuh karena kalau kayak gitu terus ya. Contohnya kalau mau ngecek tuh yang di sini udah bener belum ya. Contoh oke. Let's go. Yes, let's go. Oke. Sebentar. Ini kan sleepy streamnya, jadi jangan terlalu berapi-api gitu ya. Contoh mata. Mana ini? Oke, kita view. Bentar. Kita belum pasang BGM. Kita pasang BGM dulu. Contoh mata. Contohnya, contoh mata. Kita pasang lagunya. Kalau udah save playlistnya sih, ya paling kita BGM-nya music box lagi aja. Mana ya? Kita coba ini dulu ya. Nanti kalau ini, ya ini saja. Lagunya Laruku aja kita taruh di apa namanya? Yang music box-nya Laruku kita play. Kita kecilin suaranya. Ini masih agak terlalu gede ya. Coba mati. Ini ya. Kalau kayak ini kedengeran gak ya? Kau juga bingung sih. Contoh mata. Ara. Halo RK. Hola amigos, salah. Colabanwaa, ini baru aja mau mulai. Coba kalau mau cek PC soundnya segini. Ya segini aja kali ya. Gak usah gede-gede juga kan, kita mau baca soalnya. Oke, jadi ini layarnya. Halo. Ya, jadi kalau misalnya kalian ada yang mau baca-baca gitu, kalian bisa ada halo sayang, halo teteh Reina. Muah. Anyway ya, itu tadi yang kalau mau bahas. Kalau kalian mau membaca sesuatu gitu kan, kalian bisa ke Project Gutenberg. Jadi situsnya Project Gutenberg bisa di Google. Itu rata-rata publikasi online-nya sudah free copyright gitu. Bukan free sih tepatnya, tapi kayak hak ciptanya udah membolehkan untuk kalau misalnya mau ditaruh di publikasi lain gitu. Misalnya mau di stream kah atau mau ditaruh di TV kah gitu, dia udah nggak apa-apa. Jadi kan hukum hak cipta itu biasanya kayak setelah autornya meninggal itu kayak sekitar berapa puluh tahun. Jadi kayak ada yang 50 tahun, ada yang 90 tahun setelah yang penciptanya meninggal. Itu kayak beda-beda per negara. Yang ini Sherlock Holmes udah bisa dibacain pokoknya. Makanya juga mungkin kali ya sekarang jadinya udah banyak movie-movie yang dibuat dari Sherlock Holmes sama cerita detektif lain, mungkin kayak Poirot. Oh ya, by the way ini kayaknya Kola digeser dulu kali ya, Kolanya kegedean nih kayaknya. Kola geser ya, contoh mata. Aduh kelihatan deh. Aduh badannya kelihatan deh. Contoh. Bentar. Oke, kalau kamu turun dulu Kola. Turun dulu Kola. Turun. Bentar, apa ini yang aku turunin? Contoh mata. Kola, pinggir dulu ya Kola. Contoh mata. Kalau mau mundur. Oke. Nah, segini kali ya. Segini kali ya. Alamak. By the way, kalau tuh baru ingat kemarin itu waktu Kola nge-stream tuh ternyata tangannya Kola ada yang keluar dari selimut, tapi nggak ada yang bilangin. Kalian kok tega? Kan Kola jadi kedinginan. Wah, ada siapa lagi nih yang baru datang? Ada Nakachimariu dari Tinuturo. Halo Ryu, halo Colabanwaa. Kalau baru mau mulai baca. Ini udah mau baca kok sebenarnya. Hehe, mana ya? Cotomate. Ya, oke. The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes. Autornya Arthur Conan Doyle. Part satunya, chapter pertamanya adalah A Scandal in Bohemian Rhapsody in Bohemia. Chapter 1. Ini kayaknya chapter pertamanya tuh ngebicarain tentang Irene Adler ya. Kola tahu sih Irene Adler, cuma kayak Kola nggak tahu kalau misalnya dia tuh benar-benar langsung ada di chapter pertama. Jadi kayak wow, agak terkejut juga. Yang Scandal in Bohemia ini pernah nggak ya ada di yang Sherlock BBC-nya? Kalau di Sherlock BBC kan yang pertama tuh a case of apa ya, lupa namanya. Pokoknya yang tentang koper warna pink or something. Mana ya? Oke, kita mulai. Chapter 1. To Sherlock Holmes, she is always the woman. I have seldom heard him mention her under any other name. In his eyes she eclipses and predominates the whole of her sex. It was not that he felt any emotion aching to love for Irene Adler. All emotions, and that one particularly, were apparent to his calm, precise, but admirably balanced mind. He was, I take it, the most perfect reasoning and observing machine that the world has seen, but as a lover he would have placed himself in a false position. He never spoke of the softer passions, save with a chime and a sneer. They were admirable things for the observer, excellent for drawing the veil from man's motives and actions. But for the trained reasoner to admit such intrusions into his own delicate and finely adjusted temperament was to introduce a distracting factor which might throw a dub upon all his mental results. Grit in a sensitive instrument or a crack in one of his own high-power lances would not be more disturbing than a strong emotion in a nature such as his. And yet there was but one woman to him, and that woman was the late Irene Adler, of dubious and questionable memory. Jadi chapternya ini Irene-nya udah meninggal ya, atau setidaknya diketahui meninggal. Kalau agak lupa juga sih ini ceritanya waktu itu Irene Adler gimana gitu. Tapi Irene Adler ini emang dikenal sebagai wanita yang penuh misteri. Kayak apa ya, kayak karakter ikonik gitu, kayak karakter ikonik yang kalau mungkin kalian kalau misalnya ngeliat di Facebook kah atau di YouTube kah, kalian mungkin ngeliat ada beberapa orang yang pakai nama alias Irene Adler gitu kan, yang terinspirasi dari Sherlock Holmes, dan itu salah satunya adalah karena misterinya dia. Jadi kayak emang charmnya dia itu adalah misterius gitu kan, Irene Adler ini. Nah, cuma kalau di sini ternyata si Sherlock ini kayak memang tertarik ya. Mereka berdua itu kan memang sama-sama orang yang kayak pintar gitu kan, sangat sama-sama kalem gitu. Enggak kalem, cuma kayak mereka sangat orang apa ya, eksentrik gitu. Jadi kayak mereka kayak bisa cocok-cocokan gitu loh energinya. Tapi di sini sayangnya memang Irene Adler-nya diceritakan sudah meninggal. Sayang banget. Oh by the way, kalau misalnya Kola bacanya salah-salah maafkan Kola. Kola juga sambil latihan pronunciation, soalnya kayak dulu kan emang sering kayak diskordan sama anak-anak game gitu kan, pakai bahasa Inggris gitu, sering gitu. Tiap berapa tahun misalnya Kola main game online di server luar negeri gitu kan. Tapi sekarang udah jarang, jadinya pronunciation-nya udah jadi berkarat. Udah jadi tua. Oh iya. Oh, ada RK. Oh ya, iya. Kalau bakal lanjutin baca ceritanya kok. Hehe. Oh iya, kalau juga kalau pengen bentar. Kalau kayaknya mau nge-up dulu deh kalau udah on stream. Gimana ya Bu itunya? Kalau buka Twitter dulu sebentar. Mana ya? Ini. Apa jangan-jangan orang-orang tuh pada ngira yang ngepost itu bukan Kola, kan Kola lagi jadi PP Twitternya lagi jadi Pepsi, lagi jadi cowok. Oke. Nah itu ya, kalau juga nggak tahu sih streamnya bakal sampai kapan. Biasanya kan kalau streamnya 2 jam kan, tapi karena ini lagi sambil baca bisa jadi lebih lama gitu. So kayak biasanya kalanya juga penasaran. Right. Kalau udah nge-quote tweet, kalau gitu mana ini ya? Mata. Where is it? Wait. Hai. Oke, kita lanjut lagi. Ini mungkin laptopnya agak dinaikin sebentar biar nggak terlalu nakal. Oke, saatnya lanjut. Ya ampun, masa kepala enggak nih. Kalau lupa yang di sininya, yang di playbacknya belum dibenerin. Masa kepala kalau diem sih? Oh ya, ini kepala. Pantesan. Hade. Kenapa begini amat? Oke, tapi sebenarnya kepala kola nggak berhenti gerak kan? Oke. I had seen little of Holmes lately. A marriage had drifted us away from each other. I am complete happiness, and the home-centered interest which rise up around the man who first finds himself master of his own establishment were sufficient to absorb all my attention, while Holmes, who loathed every form of society with his whole bohemian soul, remained in our lodgings in Baker Street, buried among his old books, and alternating from week to week between cocaine and ambition, the drowsiness of the drug, and the fierce energy of his own keen nature. He was still, as ever, deeply attracted by the study of crime, and occupied his immense faculties and extraordinary powers of observation in following out those clues and clearing up those mysteries which has been abandoned as hopeless by the official police. From time to time I heard some vague account of his doings, of his summons to Odessa, in the case of the triple murder, of his clearing up of the similar tragedy of the Atkinson brothers at Trincomalee, and finally of the mission which he had accomplished so delicately and successfully for the reigning family of Holland. Beyond the signs of his activity, however, which I merely share with all the readers of the daily press, I know little of my former friend and companion. Interesting. Sebentar, jadi ini dari sudut pandangnya siapa ya? Jadi dia nyeritain tentang si Sherlock Holmes ini, tapi dia bilang, tapi ini bukan dari sisinya Sherlock Holmes, ini berarti dari mungkin temannya dia, atau apakah ini dari Watson kah? That's weird. Ya, tapi dan again aku nggak pernah baca versi aslinya sih, yang ini kan bukunya, dan ternyata gaya bahasanya lumayan agak beda ya. Ini tuh kan dipublishnya tahun berapa ya, aku lupa, Tapi itu kalimatnya ternyata panjang-panjang banget. Kola kaget. Oh, halo Jordan. Halo Kola. Kolanya kan aku. Halo Jordan, halo Tuna. Kola masih baru baca. Ya udah, Kak, lanjut baca ya. One night, it was on the 20th of March, 1888. I was returning from a journey to a patient, for I had now returned to civil practice, when my way led me through Baker Street. As I passed the well-remembered door, which must always be associated in my mind with my ruin, and with the dark incidents of the study in Scarlet, I was seized with a keen desire to see Holmes again, and to know how he was employing his extraordinary powers. His rooms were brilliantly lit, and even as I looked up, I saw his tall, spare figure pass twice in the dark silhouette against the blind. He was pacing the room swiftly, eagerly, with his head sunk upon his chest, and his hands clasped behind him. To me, who knew his every mood and habit, his attitude and manner told their own story. He was at work again. He had risen out of his drug-created dreams and was hot upon the scent of some new problem. I rang the bell and was shown up to the chamber, which had formerly been in my own. Kalau misalnya dia ngebahas civil practice, yaitu maksudnya dia praktek umum lagi, ini kayaknya emang si dokter, si Watson itu kan dulu katanya kan dokter kan ya. Jadi ini kemungkinan emang dari sudut pandangnya Watson, nampaknya seperti itu. Tapi aku lupa sih, kayak emang sih kita tahu kan kayak untuk di beberapa serialisasinya, adaptasinya kan emang si Sherlock Holmes ini agak eksentrik ya. Tapi waduh sebentar, kenapa ini malah si di drive buka? Contoh mata. Kamen. Contoh. Ya tapi gitu. Kita kan tahu kayak kalau dari adaptasi yang udah kalau si Sherlock Holmes ini emang eksentrik. Cuma di sini dia diceritain dia itu suka ngefly, suka high gitu, mengkonsumsi kokain. Kalau tidak menyangka sebenarnya. Oke, kita lanjut. Iya, CD yang bunyi. Sorry. Oke, kita lanjut ya. Nah, apa ini? Wait, ini kenapa suka? Bentar. Oke. Tadi, ini kenapa dia tahu jadi malah ke halaman 17? Aneh sekali. Oke. His manner was not evasive. His manner was not evasive. It seldom was. But he was glad, I think, to see me. With hardly a word spoken, but with a kindly eye, he waved me to an armchair, threw across his case of cigars, and indicated a spirit case and a gas gin in the corner. Then he stood before the fire and looked me over in his singular introspective fashion. What suits you? He remarked. I think, Watson, that you have put on 7.5 pounds since I saw you. Baru ketemu nih ya, dia udah ngomenin soal berat badan ke Watson. Jadi ini memang dari sudut pandangnya Watson ya. Memang ya, ini udah kayak tetangga aja ya, kayak kerabat ya, kayak baru ketemu komentarnya berat badan. Ini gimana sih? Ternyata Sherlock nih orangnya begini ya. Oke. 7, I answered. Jadi ternyata si Watsonnya baru naik 7 kilo. Nah, memang nih ya, lucu banget sih mereka. Indeed, I should have told a little more, just a trifle more, I fancy, Watson. And in practice again, I observed. You did not tell me that you intended to go into harness. Harness? Wait, what? Then how do you know? I see it, I deduce it. How do I know that you have been getting yourself very wet lately? and that you have a most clumsy and careless servant girl. My dear Holmes, said I, this is too much. You would certainly have been burned had you lived a few centuries ago. It is true that I had a country walk on Thursday and came home in a dreadful mess, but as I have changed my clothes, I can't imagine how you deduce it. As to Mary Jane, she is incorrigible, and my wife has given her notice. But there again, I fail to see how you work it out. Jadi kayak Watson nggak nyangka ini. Kenapa si Sherlock tahu kalau dia buka praktek lagi? Kayak mungkin dia kayak di-stalk sama Sherlocknya ini. He chuckled to himself and rubbed his long nervous hands together. It is simplicity itself, said he. My eyes tell me that on the inside of your left shoe, just where the firelight strikes it, the leather is scored by 6 almost parallel cuts. Obviously they have been caused by someone who has very carelessly scraped around the edges of the sole in order to remove crusted mud from it. Hence, you see, my double deduction that you had been out in foul weather, and that you had a particularly malignant but slitting specimen of the London's levy. As to your practice, if a gentleman walks into my room smelling of iodoform, with a black mark of nitrate of silver upon his right forefinger, and a bulge on the right side of his top hat to show where he has secreted his stethoscope, I must be dull, indeed, if I do not pronounce him to be an active member of the medical profession. Jadi ketahuannya itu adalah dari yang diumpet-umpetinnya si Watson. Dia Watson kayak ngumpet-ngumpetin alat-alatnya dia, kayak ngumpetin stetoskop. Terus ada marknya dan si Holmes tahu dari situ gitu. Okay. I couldn't help having at the ease with which he explained his process of deduction. Diketawain, jadi waktu si Sherlock yang ngejelasin malah diketawain. Aku juga bingung, kenapa malah diketawain. Aduh, ini kayaknya tiap kali pas scroll malah dia malah ganti halaman kayak nih. Okay. When I hear you give your reasons, I remark, the thing always appears to me to be so ridiculously simple that I could easily do it myself. At each successive instance of your reasoning, I am baffled until you explain your process, and yet I believe that my eyes are as good as yours. Quite so, he answered, lighting a cigarette and throwing himself down into an armchair. You see, but you do not observe. The distinction is clear. For example, you have frequently seen the steps which lead up from the hall to this room. Frequently. How often? Well, some hundreds of times. Then how many are there? How many? I don't know. Quite so, you haven't observed, and yet you have seen. That is just my point. Now, I know that there are 17 steps, because I have both seen and observed. By the way, since you are interested in these little problems, and since you are good enough to chronicle one or two of my traveling experiences, you may be interested in this. He threw over a sheet of thick, pink-tinted note paper which had been lying open upon the table. It came by the last post, said he, read it aloud. Jadi ini si Watson itu tuh kayak protes, kok si Holmes tuh selalu aja tahu gitu loh. Dia kayak selalu tahu gitu. Bagian waktu dijelasin, Watson ini ngerasa kok kalau dijelasin kedengerannya simple, tapi dia juga baru ngeh tuh kalau udah prosesnya dikasih tahu sama si Holmes. Holmesnya bilang gitu kayak, ya kamu emang ngelihat tapi kamu nggak memperhatikan gitu. Nah terus ini kayaknya dikasih kasus baru ini, makanya dia dipanggil. Kan read it aloud. The note was undated and without either signature or address. They will call upon you tonight at 7:45 o'clock, it said. The gentleman who desires to consult you upon a matter of the very deepest moment. Your recent services to one of the royal houses of Europe have shown that you are one who may safely be trusted with matters which are of an importance which can hardly be exaggerated. This account of you we have from all quarters received. Be in your chamber then at that hour, and do not take it amiss if your visitor wear a mask. Ini kasusnya misterius sekali. Jadi orangnya mau datang tapi dia maunya pakai mask, mau pakai topeng gitu ya. Main misterius gitu ya. This is indeed a mystery, I remarked. What do you imagine that it means? I have no data yet. It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. But the note itself, what do you deduce from it? Bener sih. Jadi orang kadang-kadang kalau misalnya belum punya data, malah datanya itu malah dipakai untuk dicocok-cocokin ke teori. Padahal sebenarnya itu teori itu yang dipakai untuk mengolah data, harusnya gitu kan. Nah, kalau di sini dia kayak menegur gitu. Kayak mereka berdua masih bingung, ini tuh notnya dari siapa. Tapi mereka pengen tahu. Jadi, tapi tegurannya si Holmes itu gitu. Jadi kalau misalnya belum punya data, jangan ngapain dulu. Bener sih, itu bijak sih. Kalian juga kalau misalnya punya data, jangan asal dicocok-cocokin gitu. Itu namanya cherry picking, oke? Bentar, ada apa ini? Malam, halo Ryu, malam juga, malam. Kalau lagi baca apa namanya? Baca Sherlock Holmes. Ini masih chapter 1, masih banyak banget. Mungkin kedepannya Kola juga nggak semuanya Kola bacain gitu ya. Kayak kalau misalnya Kola lagi free aja baru Kola bacain. I carefully examined the writing and the paper upon which it was written. The man who wrote it was presumably well-to-do, I remarked, endeavoring to imitate my companion's processes. Such paper could not be bought under half-crown a packet. It is peculiarly strong and stiff. Jadi data yang pertama itu adalah kertasnya mahal guys, harganya mahal. Sungguh suatu kayak jadi penting ya guys ternyata harga kertas. Jadi karena kertasnya mahal, jadi orang yang ngirim ini kemungkinan orang berada gitu. Peculiar, that is the very word, said Holmes. It is not an English paper at all. Hold it up to the light. I did so and saw a large E with a small g, a P and a large G with a small t woven into the texture of the paper. Jadi apa? E, G, P, G, T. What? E? What do you make summary contraction like our co? Oh, P of course stands for papier. Now for the EG, let us glance at our continental gazetteer. He took down a heavy brown volume from his shelves. Iglo, Iglanitz, here we are, Igria. It is in a German-speaking country in Bohemia, not far from Carlsbad. Oh, jadi data pertamanya itu adalah dari inisial waktu kertasnya itu di Terawang. Nah, kata G ini ternyata katanya adalah kayak semacam menunjukkan bahwa itu adalah perusahaan, tapi dalam bahasa Jerman, Gesellschaft. Nah, terus dicari kan kayak perusahaan kertas yang ada di sekitar sini tuh yang pakai huruf EG itu apa ya? Oh, ternyata Egria. Egria itu ada tempatnya di Jerman. Jadi Egria Gesellschaft kemungkinan. Egria Gesellschaft. Okay. Remarkable as being the scene of the death of Wallenstein, and for its numerous glass factories and paper mills. Haha, my boy, what do you make of that? His eyes sparkled, and he sent up a great blue triumphant cloud from his cigarette. The paper was made in Bohemia, I said. Precisely, and the man who wrote the note is a German. Do you know the peculiar? How do you write peculiar? The peculiar construction of the sentence. This account of you we have from all quarters received. A A Frenchman or Russian could not have written that. It is the German who is so uncourteous to his verbs. Aduh, jadi katanya kata-katanya itu nggak sopan, jadi pasti orang Jerman. Kalau orang Jerman kasar-kasar. Aduh, deductionnya ini agak nyindir-nyindir ya. Aduh. It only remains, therefore, to discover what is wanted by this German who writes upon Bohemian paper and prefers wearing a mask to showing his face. And here he comes, if I am not mistaken, to resolve all our doubts. As he spoke, there was the sharp sound of horses' hoofs and grating wheels against the curb, followed by a sharp pull at the bell. Holmes whistled. Jadi orangnya udah datang ini ya, kayak keretanya udah nyampe depan rumahnya Holmes. Depan apa sih, apartemennya? Apa yang namanya? Wait, what? Wait, who sent what? I'm not. What? I cannot see that. Oh, oke. Biar daripada itu, aku lihat itu aja kali ya, lihat. Otaru ngasih, oh my god. Terima kasih Ryu, terima kasih udah ngasih coko, thank you. Ebook adalah masa depan, seperti masa depan kita berdua. Aduh, RKMI, aduh ya. Memang ya, nggak salah sih kayak kalau misalnya nggak ada ebook mungkin kedepannya bakalan susah. Atau nggak, mungkin lebih tepatnya gini, kayak kita kan punya buku ya, tapi kan buku itu kan kertas nggak tahan selamanya. Jadi kayak dengan adanya ebook itu membantu restorasi, membantu apa ya, melestarikan ilmu sama karya-karya yang udah ada. Makanya situs-situs kayak tempat kalau ngambil buku yang ini, buku e-publicationnya Sherlock Holmes ini kan dari Project Gutenberg. Nah, makanya ada situs-situs kayak gitu, orang-orang yang ngasih effort buat melestarikan karya-karya yang udah lama gitu, biar semua orang juga bisa baca, biar nggak kemakan sama kertasnya kalau misalnya kertasnya udah lapuk atau gimana gitu. Oke, kita lanjut baca lagi. Appear by the sound, said he. Yes, he continued, glancing out of the window. A nice little broad-ham and a pair of beauties, 150 guineas apiece. There's money in this case, Watson, if there is nothing else. Jadi si Sherlock yang rasa, wah ini kasusnya bakalan berduit ini, wah dia semangat ini, bakal dibayar gitu. I think that I had better go, Holmes. Watsonnya mau kabur. Not a bit, Doctor. Stay where you are. I am lost without my Boswell. And this promises to be interesting. It will be a pity to miss it. But your client? Never mind him. I may want your help, and so may he. Here he comes. Sit down in that armchair, Doctor, and give us your best attention. Slow and heavy step which had been heard upon the stairs and in the passage paused immediately outside the door. Then there was a loud and authoritative tap. Come in, said Holmes. A man entered who could hardly have been less than 6 feet 6 inches in height, with a chest and limbs of a Hercules. Bentar, ini badannya sangat nggak proporsional ya. Jadi kayaknya orangnya nggak tinggi-tinggi banget, tapi ototnya kayak Hercules. Gimana? Ada yang ngirim lagi? Nani? Oh my, what? Wait, what? Anon, thanks a lot, Anon. Oh my god. That's all, that's freaking a lot. Oh my god, thanks. I hope you enjoy my stream. Semoga suka streamnya Kola. Makasih banyak. Kalau benar gak nyangka kalau tiba kalau ada yang pada nge-traktir. Terima kasih. Okay. A man entered who could hardly have been less than 6 feet 6. Oh, tadi udah yang ini. Okay. His dress was rich with a richness which would in England be looked upon as akin to bad taste. Jadi bajunya jelek. Heavy bands of astrakhan were slashed across the sleeves and fronts of his double-breasted coat, while the deep blue cloak which was thrown over his shoulders was lined with flame-colored silk and secured at the neck with a brooch which consisted of a single flaming barrel, boots which extended halfway up his calves, and which were trimmed at the tops with rich brown fur, completed the impression of barbaric opulence, which was suggested by his whole what? By his whole appearance. He carried a broad-brimmed hat in his hand, while he wore across the upper part of his face, extending down past the cheekbones, a black visored mask, which he had apparently adjusted that very moment, for his hand was still raised to it as he entered. From the lower part of the face he appeared to be a man of strong character, with a thick hanging lip and a long straight chin, suggestive of resolution pushed to the length of obstinacy. Ini kayak kalau tuh baru sadar sih. Jadi kayak kalau di sini observasinya si Holmes ini kayaknya sih, kalau ini dari Holmes ya, atau entahlah, ini kan dari third person POV ya, jadi kayak dari sudut pandang orang ketiga, jadi not necessarily dari kepalanya Holmes juga. Tapi di sini dia kayak ngebahas itu dari bajunya, kayak bajunya itu bad taste gitu kan. Tapi di yang terakhir-akhir tuh kayak dia ngebahas kayak bibirnya itu mensugestikan orangnya itu sangat resolute, jadi kayak orangnya itu sangat decisive, kayak dia tahu mau apa gitu kan. Cuma dari bibirnya gitu, memang was sekali. Oke, kita lanjut. Ini agak rempong juga ya, ini kayaknya HP-nya Kola mesti dipegang agak manual. Ups, bentar, kejepit, fokus. Oke, ini Hai, Korena. You had my note? He asked with a deep, harsh voice and strongly marked Germanist accent. Ini kenapa deh kalau baca ini susah sebentar. I told you that I would call. He looked from one to the other of us as if uncertain which to address. Jadi kayaknya dia nggak tahu sosoknya si Sherlock yang mana. Ketukar kayaknya sama si Watson. Pray take a seat, said Holmes. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. Who is occasionally good enough to help me in my cases. And have I the honor to address? You may address me as the Count von Kran, a Bohemian nobleman. I understand that this gentleman, your friend, is a man of honor and discretion, whom I may trust with a matter of the most extreme importance. If not, I shall much prefer to communicate with you alone. Jadi dia masih agak ngeraguin Watson, tapi ya dia cukup percaya sih sekarang. Tapi kalau misalnya dia nanya lagi ke Holmes ya, ini beneran bisa dipercaya nggak nih? Kalau enggak, mendingan kita ngomong berdua aja nih, kita empat mata aja nih katanya. I rose to go, but Holmes caught me by the wrist and pushed me back into my chair. It is both or none, said he. You may say before this gentleman anything which you may say to me. Jadi dibelain Holmes. Aduh, buat yang udah pernah nonton adaptasinya yang BBC yang Sherlock, ini momennya agak bromance sekali ini ya. Jadi nggak mau dia maunya berdua, nggak mau cuma sendiri. maunya Watson itu diikutin gitu. Ya aku juga buat tadi ngeliat siapa yang ngedonat, oh my god. Halo Kola, halo Sian. Iya 200 Kola gak nyangka sumpah. Kayak aslian Kola gak nyangka. Makasih banyak yang tadi udah donate, thank you. Kalau misalnya Anon adalah Anon yang sama yang nge-traktir sebelumnya, makasih banyak. Maaf yang waktu kemarin mungkin ada yang donate itu traktirnya lagi error, jadi kayak alertnya nggak nyala gitu, maafkan Kola, maafkan traktir. Ya itu kemarin ada saya yang Anon juga ngetraktir, dan itu kayak recroll jatuhnya. Inori oh itu Inori ya, tadi ku kira yang ngedonate ku kira Anon. Oh maaf kalau lihat layarnya kecil saja nggak kebaca komen. But thanks a lot, oh my god thank you. Oke, kalau lanjut baca. Inori apa? Ini layarnya agak kecil loh ya, kalau kurang bisa baca. Nanti kalau cek di traktir. Ya, mungkin nanti, oh ya, apa cek sekarang aja kali ya. Apakah itu Inori atau Inari? Soalnya fontnya traktir tuh agak bulat-bulat gimana gitu. Jadi A sama O itu agak ketukar-tukar kalau menurut Kola. Bentar, Kola lihat dulu ya contoh matanya. Kana. Apakah itu A? Apakah itu O? Contoh mata. Mana ya? Tapi kalau di sini seseorang sih, makanya aku bingung. Di leaderboardnya tulisannya Inori apa Inari, tapi kalau di traktirnya sekolah tulisannya seseorang. Makanya Kola juga bingung. Nanti Kola zoom deh. Oke. Iya, makanya Kola bingung gitu. Tapi kalau di ininya, di top supporter tulisannya Inari apa Inori. Oke. Aduh, nggak sendawa, maaf. Oke, kita lanjut. Oh, Ina. Oke, Inari. Thank you udah ngecekin. Kalau agak bingung. Apa ini? Oh, doxing jalur traktir. Enggak lah, bukan doxing ini mah. Ini mah kalau tuh mau ngebuka traktir karena layarnya emang kecil gitu. Layar yang kalau monitoring emang kecil. Oke. Kita lanjut. The Count shrugged his broad shoulders. Then I must begin, said he, by binding you both to absolute secrecy for 2 years. At the end of that time, the matter will be of no importance. Waduh, jadi kontrak nggak boleh ngomong ya, non-disclosure agreement-nya 2 tahun. Jadi kalau udah megang kasus ini nggak boleh ngomong 2 tahun gitu. Apa ini? At present, it is not too much to say that it is of such weight it may have an influence upon European history. I promise, said Holmes, and I. You'll excuse this mask, continued our strange visitor. The august person who employs me wishes his agent to be unknown to you, and I may confess at once that the title by which I have just called myself is not exactly my own. I was aware of it, says Holmes dryly. Aduh, jadi Holmes udah mulai songong nih, kayak iyalah gue tahu gitu. Oh alah, sebentar. Ini jangan bilang koneksinya error. Sebentar. Oh enggak, udah jalan. Soalnya kalau lagi monitoring juga kan layarnya. Tapi entah kenapa matanya diem gitu, kayak lagi loading kali. Oke, kita lanjut. Ini menarik. I was also aware of that, murmured Holmes, settling himself down in his armchair and closing his eyes. Our visitor glanced with some apparent surprise at the languid, lounging figure of the man who had been no doubt depicted to him as the most incisive reasoner and most energetic agent in Europe. Holmes slowly reopened his eyes and looked impatiently at his gigantic client. Jadi kayaknya badannya gede, guys. If your Majesty will condescend to state your case, he remarked, I shall be better able to advise you. The man sprang from his chair and paced up and down the room in uncontrollable agitation. Then, with a gesture of desperation, he tore the mask from his face and hurled it upon the ground. You are right, he cried. I am the king. Why should I attempt to conceal it? Why indeed, murmured Holmes. Your Majesty had not spoken, before I was aware that I was addressing Wilhelm Guthridge Sigismund von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Castle-Fonstein and hereditary King of Bohemia. Jadi guys, ini orang datangnya ngaku-ngakunya itu adalah disuruh sama si rajanya, atau kayak pokoknya disuruh orang penting, tapi ternyata dia itu rajanya sendiri yang datang ke tempatnya si Holmes. Aduh, kenapa sih malu-malu gitu? Holmesnya bete gitu, kayak kamu tuh ngapain ngumpet-ngumpet gitu, kamu tuh ngapain ngumpet, aku tuh udah tahu kamu tuh siapa gitu kan. But you can understand, said our strange visitor, sitting down once more and passing his hand over his high white forehead. You can understand that I am not accustomed to doing such business in my own person, yet the matter was so delicate that I could not confide it to an agent without putting myself in his power. I have come incognito from Prague to the purpose of consulting you. Then, pray consult, said Holmes, shutting his eyes once more. Sumpah guys, si Holmes ini udah ini ngasih kasus tuh raja guys, tapi Holmesnya tuh kayak sombong banget. Karena udah ngerasa nih orang nih udah tahu aku tuh gitu kan, tapi ya malah digituin. Aduh, ini raja ini yang ke tempat dia. The facts are briefly these. Some 5 years ago, during a lengthy visit to Warsaw, I made the acquaintance of the well-known adventuress Irene Adler. The name is no doubt familiar to you. Kindly look her up in my index, Doctor, murmured Holmes without opening his eyes. For many years he had adopted a system of docketing, or paragraphs, concerning men and things, so that it was difficult to name a subject or a person on which he could not at once furnish information. In this case, I found her biography, sandwiched in between that of a Hebrew rabbi and that of a staff commander who had written a monograph upon the deep sea fishes. Ya, oke, jadi ini kayaknya Kola tuh udah pernah, ini Kola kan nonton adaptasi BBC-nya Sherlock juga kan, yang dimainin Benedict Cumberbatch. Nah, Kola kayaknya udah pernah nonton nih yang kasus yang ini, tapi Kola juga lupa-lupa dikit sih plotnya, jadi nggak apa-apa. Nah, ini apa ini? Yang bikin Kola ketawa itu tadi ternyata filenya si Irene Adler, waktu si rajanya ngebahas si Irene Adler kan disuruh itu kan ngecek siapa sih itu Irene Adler. Tapi file itu ketumpuk di antara filenya Hebrew Rabbi. Jadi kayak semacam ulama. Jadi di antara file ulama sama apa ini? Sama commander, staff commander, tapi nggak tahu staff commander apa. Let me see, said Holmes. Aduh, maaf kalau triknya. Born in New Jersey in the year 1858, contralto, La Scala, prima donna imperial of Warsaw, yes, retired from operatic stage, living in London, quite so. Your Majesty, as I understand, became entangled with this young person, wrote her some compromising letters, and is now desirous of getting those letters back. Precisely so, but how? Was there a secret marriage? None. No legal papers or certificates? None. And I fail to follow your Majesty. If this young person should produce her letters for blackmailing or other purposes, how is she to prove their authenticity? There's the writing. Pooh, forgery. My private note paper, stolen. My own seal, imitated. My photograph, bought. We were both in the photograph. Oh dear, that is very bad. Your Majesty has indeed committed an indiscretion. I was mad insane. You have compromised yourself seriously. Jadi masalahnya kayak si Holmes ini kayak ngeledek si rajanya, kayak kok bisa sih. Jadi kayak si Holmes udah tahu, kayak ya udah tau lah modus operandinya si Irene Adler gitu kan, kayak makanya ditanyain kayak ada urusan apa aja, apa kamu ditodong apa aja gitu kan. Tapi terus kayak orang dibingungin gitu, kayak ditanya kok kenapa dimasalin banget, emang orang bakalan percaya gitu sama si Irene Adler. Tapi ya itu, jadi kayak banyak kayak tanda-tandanya, fotonya segala macam dipalsuin gitu, ikut modus operandinya si Irene Adler gitu. Terus diledek sama Holmes ya, gitu, kayak kok mau gitu, kok bisa-bisanya kamu tuh raja tapi kok bisa-bisanya ada di masalah seperti ini gitu. Makanya diketawain, kayak nadanya itu kayak nyindir gitu. Nah, terus kayak ya udah, makanya itu kan si rajanya panik, jadinya nyari bantuan ke si Holmes. I was only crown prince then. I was young. I am but 30 now. Oh, ini kejadiannya waktu rajanya masih muda, masih pangeran gitu. It must be recovered. We have tried and failed. Your Majesty must pay. It must be bought. Oh, jadi kayaknya si Holmes ini udah hafal sama modus operandinya si Irene Adler. Ini hitungannya blackmail, makanya dia nyaranin si rajanya buat ini harus dibeli gitu. Apa ini? Benedict cucumber banana? Ya, bisa dibilang seperti itu. Benedict cucumber banana. Ayo bentar, jangan salah fokus. Okay. She will not sell. Stolen then. 5 attempts have been made. Twice burglars in my parents sacked her house. Once we diverted her luggage when she traveled. Twice she has been waylaid. There has been no result, no sign of it? Absolutely none, Holmes laughed. It is quite a pretty little problem, said he. But a very serious one to me, returned the king reproachfully. Very indeed, and what does she propose to do with the photograph? To ruin me. But how? I am about to be married, so I have heard. The Clotilde of man von Saxe. The Clotilde of man von Saxe-Meiningen, second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. You may know the strict principles of her family. She is herself the very soul of delicacy. A shadow of a doubt as to my conduct will bring the matter to an end. And Irene Adler threatens to send them the photograph. She will do it. I know that she will do it. You do not know her. Wait. You do not know her. But she has a soul of steel. She has the face of the most beautiful of women and the mind of the most resolute of men. Rather than I should marry another woman, there are no lengths to which she would not go. None. Okay. Jadi kayak udah yakin banget ini tuh bakal dijual sama Irene Adler gitu. Irene Adler tuh orangnya udah sangat resolute, udah kalau saya mau ngelakuin sesuatu tuh pasti dilakuin gitu. Makanya dia takut. You are sure that she has not sent it yet? I am sure. And why? Because she has said that she will send it on the day when the betrothal was publicly proclaimed. That will be next Monday. Oh, then we have 3 days yet, said Holmes with a yawn. That is very fortunate, as I have 1 or 2 matters of importance to look into just at present. Your Majesty will, of course, stay in London for the present? Certainly. You will find me at the Langham under the name of the Count von Kram. Then I shall drop you a line to let you know how we progress. Pray do so, I shall be all anxiety. Then, as to money, you have carte blanche? Okay. I'm not sure how to read that one. Absolutely. I tell you that I will give one of the provinces of my kingdom to have that photograph. Wow. Jadi kayak dia rela nyerahin satu daerah gitu buat demi dapat itu foto yang dipegang Irene Adler. And for present expenses, the king took a heavy kimono, let a bag from under his cloak and laid it on the table. Oops. There are 300 pounds in gold and 700 in notes, he said. Jadi cashnya ada 300 pounds sterling. Terus 700-nya mungkin hitungannya dicek kali ya, hitungannya in notes. Holmes scribbled a receipt upon the sheet of his notebook and handed it to him. And Mademoiselle's address? Yes. It's Brindle Lodge, Serpentine Avenue, St. John's Wood. Holmes took a note of it. One other question, said he. Was the photograph a cabinet? It was. Huh? Then good night, Your Majesty, and I trust that we shall soon have some good news for you. And good night, Watson, he added, as the wheels of the royal brougham rolled down the street. If you'll be good enough to call tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I should like to chat this little matter over with you. Jadi ini kayak nutup request kasusnya si raja. Mereka sambil jalan ke bawah, jadi si rajanya udah dianterin ke ke keretanya lagi. Keretanya tuh apa ya namanya? Namanya delman, bukan bukan kereta. Apa ya namanya? Kok nggak lupa? At 3 o'clock, ini udah chapter 2 aja. Ayo kita lanjut aja chapter 2. Kalau misalnya satu chapter sepanjang itu kali kita sampai habisin chapter 3 aja kali ya. Kayaknya nggak terlalu panjang juga. Nggak apa-apa lah ya. At 3 o'clock precisely I was at Baker Street, but Holmes had not yet returned. The landlady informed me that he had left the house shortly after 8 o'clock this morning. I sat down beside the fire, however, with the intention of awaiting him, however long he might be. I was already deeply interested in his inquiry, for though it was surrounded by none of the grim and strange features which were associated with the 2 crimes which I have already recorded, still, the nature of the case and the exalted station of his client gave it a character of its own. Indeed, apart from the nature of the investigation which my friend had on hand, there was something in his masterly grasp of a situation, and his keen, incisive reasoning, which made it a pleasure to me to study his system of work and to follow the quick, subtle methods by which he disentangled the most inextricable mysteries. So accustomed was I to his invariable success that the very possibility of his failing had ceased to enter into my head. Jadi si Watson ini udah sangat kayak apa ya? Kayak tersepona, bukan tersepona, tapi kayak semacam udah sangat tertarik gitu, kayak terbuai gitu dengan cara uniknya si Holmes ini mecahin kasus-kasus, sampai dia lupa bahwa si Holmes ini juga ada saatnya dia tuh kayak gagal atau kayak ceroboh gitu. Nah, jadi kayak walaupun dia bete gitu, kayak ini dadakan banget sih ngasih kasus, tapi kayak waktu dia disuruh datang dia nunggu juga gitu, padahal Holmesnya lagi nggak ada gitu kan. By the way, kalau misalnya kalian mau chat silakan aja ngechat, nggak apa-apa, kalau nggak masalah kok. Ini kita tiap berapa lama kalau ngecek chat kok sebenarnya. It was close upon 4 before the door opened, and a drunken-looking groom, ill-kempt and side-whiskered, with an inflamed face and disreputable clothes, walked into the room. Accustomed as I was to my friend's amazing powers in the use of disguises, I had to look 3 times before I was certain that it was indeed he. With a nod, he vanished into the bedroom, whence he emerged in 5 minutes. Suited and respectable as supposed. Jadi balik-balik si Sherlocknya itu jadi lagi pakai penyamaran jadi mempelai pria yang mabuk. Ini kenapa sih dengan si Holmes kok gini banget gitu? Oh, so Pepsi. Hello Alexei. Sorry, wrong stream. No, you're not on the wrong stream. So Pepsi lagi di sebelahku kok, lagi nemenin baca. Kakak so Pepsi. Halo Alexei. Oke, ayo kita lanjut. Apa ini? Okay. Putting his hands into his pockets, he stretched out his legs in front of the fire and allowed heartily for some minutes. Well, really, he cried, and then he choked and laughed again until he was obliged to lie back, limp and helpless in the chair. What is it? That is quite too funny. I'm sure you could never guess how I employed my morning or what I ended by doing. I can't imagine. I suppose that you have been watching the habits and perhaps the house of Miss Irene Adler. Jadi kayak tebakannya si Watson adalah si Sherlock ini abis mengintai rumahnya Miss Adler. Quite so, but the sequel was rather unusual. I will tell you, however, I left the house a little after 8 o'clock this morning in the character of a groom out of work. There is a wonderful sympathy and freemasonry among horsey men. Be one of them, and you will know that all that there is to know. I soon found Brinell Lodge. It is a bijou. How do you read bijou? Is a bijou? Villa with a garden at the back. but built out in front right up to the road 2 stories. Top locked to the door, large sitting room on the right side, well furnished, with long windows almost to the floor, and those preposterous English window fastener which a child could open. Behind there was nothing remarkable, save that the passage window could be reached from the top of the coach house. I looked round it and examined it closely from every point of view, but without noting anything else of interest. I then launched down the street and found, as I expected, that there was a mews in a lane which runs down by one wall of the garden. I lent the ostlers and had in rubbing down their horses, and received in exchange 2 pence, a glass of half and half, 2 fills of shag tobacco, and as much information as I could desire about Miss Adler, to say nothing of half a dozen other people in the neighborhood in whom I was not in the least interested, but whose biographies I was compelled to listen to. Oke, jadi dia nyamar jadi mempelai mabuk demi mendapatkan biasanya kalau jadi mempelai mabuk katanya orang-orang jadi simpati sama dia, terutama yang sesama perjaka gitu, sesama cowok gitu ya. Terus somehow dia malah dia menelusuri jalan, terus dia kayak nyasar di taman orang, terus malah diceritain gosip-gosip orang-orang di sekitar neighborhood itu, terus dikasih tahu info tentang Miss Adler. Sungguh ini kok cara observasinya sungguh menarik ini. Jadi dia nanya-nanya tetangga. Waduh. And what of Irene Adler, I asked. Oh, she has turned all the men's heads down in that part. She's the daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet. So say the serpentine muse to a man. She lives quietly, sings at concerts, drives out at 5 every day, and returns at 7, sharp for dinner. Seldom goes out at other times, except when she sings. Has only one male visitor, but a good deal of him. He is dark, handsome, and dashing, never calls less than once a day, and often twice. He is a Mr. Godfrey Norton of the Inner Temple. See the advantages of a cabman as a confidant. They had driven him home a dozen times from Serpentine Mews and knew all about him. When I had listened to all they had to tell, I began to walk up and down near Bareng Lodge once more, and to think over my plan of campaign. This Godfrey Norton was evidently an important factor in the matter. He was a lawyer. That sounded ominous. What was the relation between them, and what the object of his repeated visits? Was she his client, his friend, or his mistress? If the former, she had probably retransferred the photograph to his keeping. If the latter, it was less likely. On the issue of this question depended whether I should continue my work at Bareng Lodge or turn my attention to the gentlemen's chambers in the temple. It was a delicate point, and it widened the field of my inquiry. I fear that I bore you with these details, but I have to let you see my little difficulties if you are to understand the situation. I am following you closely, I answered. I was still balancing the matter in my mind when a hansom cab drove up to Bareng Lodge, and a gentleman sprang out. He was a remarkably handsome man, dark, aquiline, and moustached. Evidently, the man of whom I had heard. He appeared to be in a great hurry, shouted to the cabman to wait, and brushed past the maid who opened the door with the air of a man who was thoroughly at home. Jadi katanya di rumahnya Miss Adler itu ada pengunjung yang sering kesana itu adalah seorang cowok, orangnya dark skin gitu kan, terus kayak emang yang datang tuh cuma satu cowok itu tapi sering banget gitu. Terus kan dijelasin gitu penampilannya kayak gimana. Tahu-tahu datang ke tempatnya Holmes sama Watson. Nah, oke. Kita lanjut. Bentar. Aku mau cek chatbox dulu deh. Oke. Ah ya, titip salam. Oh ya. Tenang aja. Udah salamnya udah disampaikan kok ke Sob Pepsi. Tenang aja. Tapi besok dia kayaknya mau pergi balik lagi keluar kota. Hehehe. He was in the house but coba banget. Ya kayak gini mendingan. Ini laptopnya di perut kola jadi agak ketekan. Jadi dari tadi kalau misalnya mau baca agak mesti pakai auto dikit. He was in the house about half an hour and I could catch glimpses of him in the windows of the sitting room, pacing up and down, talking excitedly and waving his arms. Of her I could see nothing. Presently he emerged, looking even more flurried than before. As he stepped up to the cab, he pulled a gold watch from his pocket and looked at it earnestly. "Drive like the devil," he shouted, first to Gross and Hankey's in Regent Street, and then to the Church of St. Monica in the Edgware Road. "Half a guinea if you do it in 20 minutes. Away they went, and I was just wondering whether I should not do well to follow them when up the lane came a neat little landau, the coachman with his coat only half buttoned and his tie under his ear. Hah? Dasinya di bawah telinga gimana? While all the tags of his harness were sticking out of the buckles. It hadn't pulled up before she shot out of the hall door and into. I only caught a glimpse of her at the moment, but she was a lovely woman with a face that a man might die for. Oh enggak, jadi mereka itu apa namanya? Bukan di apa? Jadi yang tadi dijelasin itu bukan si Watson, tapi si Holmes itu kayaknya diceritain sama entah tetangga, entah supirnya si Adler ini tentang si pengunjung yang sering datengin Miss Adler ini. Terus waktu dia lagi denger cerita itu, kayak nggak lama kemudian dia ngeliat orang yang diceritain itu datang. Nah, terus dia ngikutin lagi nih, kayak si orangnya itu bilang pergi ke Gross and Hankey's in Regent Street gitu. Terus di situ si Holmesnya pengen ngikutin gitu. Iya, jadi mereka si Holmesnya itu waktu lagi ngintai Miss Adler itu kayak bingung mau ngikutin gak ya, ngikutin si Capnya itu gak ya. Oke, terus nih, "The Church of St. Monica, John," she cried, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. Dia ternyata mau ke gereja. This was quite too good to lose, Watson. I was just balancing whether I should run for it or whether I should perch behind her landau when a cab came through the street. The driver looked twice at such a shabby fare, but I jumped in before he could object. "The Church of St. Monica," said I, "and half a sovereign if you reach it in 20 minutes. Oh, jadi kayak si Holmes akhirnya ngikutin si orang yang yang katanya suka ngunjungin Miss Adler ini ke gereja Santa Monica. Tapi dia kayak narik cabnya, terus dia bayarnya itu ternyata murah gitu. Kayak driver itu kayak ogah-ogahan, tapi kayak akhirnya kayak dipaksa gitu, akhirnya tetap jalan gitu. Kalau misalnya nyampe 20 menit bayarannya dinaikin katanya. It was 20 minutes to 12, and of course it was clear enough what was in the wind. My cabby drove fast. I don't think I ever drove faster, but the others were there before us. The cab and the landau with their streaming horses were in front of the door when I arrived. I paid the man and hurried into the church. There was not a soul there to save the two whom I had followed and a surprised clergyman who seemed to be postulating with them. They were all three standing in a knot in front of the altar. I lunged up the side aisle like any other idler who has dropped into a church. Suddenly, to my surprise, the three at the altar faced around to me, and Godfrey Norton came running as hard as he could towards me. "Oh, thank God," he cried. "You'll do. Come. What then?" I asked. "Come, man, come. Only 3 minutes or it won't be legal. Huh? Wait, what's happening? What's happening? Jadi waktu lagi mengintai orang yang suka ngunjungin Miss Adler, si si Holmes ini kayak pura-pura jadi pengunjung biasa gitu kan. Tau-tau tiga-tiganya pada ngeliatin dia, terus tau-tau dia diajakin, nggak tahu ini diajakin apa, tapi kayak in a hurry gitu, kayak buru-buru. Kenapa ini? Ada apa ini? Or it won't be illegal. I was half dragged up to the altar, and before I knew where I found myself mumbling responses which were whispered in my ear, and vouching for things of which I knew nothing, and generally assisting in the secure tying up of Irene Adler, spinster to Godfrey Norton, bachelor. It was all done in an instant, and there was the gentleman thanking me on the one side and the lady on the other, while the clergyman beamed on me in front. It was the most preposterous position in which I ever found myself in my life, and it was the thought of it that started me laughing just now. It seems that there had been some informality about their license, that the clergyman absolutely refused to marry them without a witness of some sort, and that my lucky appearance saved the bridegroom from having to sally out into the streets in search of a best man. The bride gave me a sovereign, and I mean to wear it on my watch chain in memory of the occasion. Jadi entah kenapa dia kayak malah jadi diseret jadi saksi pernikahan. Okay, what the heck is happening? Kenapa lagi ngintai orang malah tahu-tahu diseret jadi saksi nikahan? Nggak ada orang lain gitu yang diundang buat jadi saksi nikahan? This is so absurd, guys. I don't know if Sherlock Holmes is this absurd. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, this is funny. This is very entertaining. Maksudnya kayak ini kayak lucu banget gitu. Maksudnya aku nggak ngehina, tapi gimana ceritanya lagi ngintai toto malah disuruh jadi saksi pernikahan orang. Kan lucu. Oke. Kepencet bentar. Bentar. Mana ya tadi? Ya. This is a very unexpected turn of affairs, said I. And what then? Well, I found my plans very seriously menaced. It looked as if the pair might take an immediate departure, and so necessitate very prompt and energetic measures on my part. At the church door, however, they separated, he driving back to the temple and she to her own house. I shall drive out in the park at 5 as usual, she said. As she left him, I heard no more. They drove away in different directions, and I went off to make my own arrangements, which are some cold beef and a glass of beer, he answered, ringing the bell. I have been too busy to think of food, and I am likely to be busier still this evening. By the way, doctor, I shall want your cooperation. Jadi udah diseret jadi saksi pernikahan orang dadakan. Dia malah pasangan mempelainya malah tahu langsung misah gitu. Ada yang pergi lagi naik cab, ada yang balik lagi ke rumah. Terus si Holmesnya malah pergi ke buat nyari makan. Dia makan cold beef, jadi daging dingin. Mungkin di sini maksudnya steak yang rare atau medium rare kali ya. Karena kan biasanya mereka nggak terlalu anget gitu steak yang kayak rare or medium rare gitu kan. Maaf kalau agak cadel, hehe, maafkan. Terus ini si Watsonnya diminta lagi cooperationnya. Aku nggak tahu buat apa sih tapi. Okay. I shall be delighted. You don't mind breaking the law? Not in the least. Nor running a chance of arrest? Not in a good cause. Oh, the cause is excellent. Then I am your man. Ini bener-bener ya Watson ini partner in crime ya kayak nggak takut apa-apa gitu ya. Aduh, ini OTP sekali. Aduh, maaf. aduh, shippernya keluar ini kalah. I was sure that I might rely on you. But what is it that you wish? When Miss Turner has brought in the tray, I will make it clear to you. Now, he said as he turned hungrily on the simple fare that our landlady had provided, I must discuss it while I eat, for I have not much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours we must be on the scene of action. Miss Irene or Madame rather returns from her drive at 7. We must be at Briony Lodge to meet her. And what then? You must leave that to me. I have already arranged what is to occur. There is only one point on which I must insist. You must not interfere, come what may. You understand? I am to be neutral? To do nothing. Whatever. There will probably be some small unpleasantness. Do not join in it. It will end in my being conveyed into the house. 4 or 5 minutes afterwards, the sitting room window will open. You are to station yourself close to that open window. Oh, jadi mereka mau staging kayak skenario gitu kayaknya. Jadi ini kayaknya biar untuk dia kayak si Holmes ini kayaknya mau nyamar lagi. Tapi untuk nyamarnya itu kayak butuh bantuan biar situasinya itu menguntungkan di dia. Jadi kayak bisa kita dikenalin sebagai orang apa-apa. Nah si Watsonnya ini kayak jadi accomplice-nya, jadi kayak temennya yang ngebantuin dia actingin skenario-nya dia itu. You are to watch for me, for I will be visible to you. Yes. And when I raise my hands, so you will throw into the room what I give you to throw, and will at the same time raise the cry of fire. You quite follow me? Entirely. Oh, jadi kayak si Holmes ini pengen dirinya itu dimasukin ke rumahnya si Adler. Nah, caranya itu yaitu kayak ngelakuin skenario tadi. Ntar mungkin si Holmes ngaku-ngakunya jadi apa, terus nanti dia bakalan berusaha mencapai ruangan apa dan buka jendela. Nah, si Watson ini disuruh ngelempar sesuatu yang nanti si Holmes ini bakalan kasih ke Watson. It is nothing very formidable, he said, taking a long cigar-shaped roll from his pocket. It is an ordinary plumber's smoke croquette, fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting. Your task is confined to that. When you raise your cry of fire, it will be taken up by quite a number of people. You may then walk to the end of the street and I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope that I have made myself clear. Oh, jadi waktu jendelanya dibuka dia kayaknya mau ngelempar sesuatu biar kesannya ada yang kebakaran gitu loh. Nanti habis itu baru mereka keluar lagi. Apa ini? Pas banget dong seharian ini nontonin film Sherlock Holmes. Film yang mana? Oh ya, Colabanwaa koder. Colabanwaa. Film yang mana nih? Yang BBC, yang series, atau yang movie yang si Robert Downey Johnson, RDJ. Kan ada juga yang barunya movie-nya. Yang pemerannya sama kayak pemeran Iron Man. Contoh mata. Ini BTW yang pada baru datang siapa aja? Dari tadi ada yang bolak-balik keluar masuk tapi kalau nggak tahu. Oke. Lagi. Okay. I am to remain neutral, to get near the window, to watch you, and at the signal to throw in this object, then to raise the cry of fire and to wait you at the corner of the street. Precisely. Then you may entirely rely on me. That is excellent. I think, perhaps, it is almost time that I prepare for the new role I have to play. He disappeared into his bedroom and returned in a few minutes in the character of an amiable and simple-minded, nonconformist clergyman. Nonconformist. Jadi dia pakai samaran. Jadi dia kayak pasang samaran cuma beberapa menit gitu. His broad black hat, his baggy trousers, his white tie, his sympathetic smile, and general look of peering and benevolent curiosity were such as Mr. John Hare alone could have equaled. Ini John Hare itu siapa ya? Mungkin tokoh di masa itu kali ya. It was not merely that Holmes changed his costume. His expression, his manner, his very soul seemed to vary with every fresh part that he assumed. The stage lost a fine actor, even as science lost an acute reasoner. when he became a specialist in crime. Jadi si Holmes ini nggak cuma jago deduksi, tapi dia juga jago jadi aktor. Kalau misalnya lagi nyamar, wow. Anyway, nanti kalau misalnya chapter 2 udah selesai, Kola kayaknya mau break dulu, mau minum karena aus. Hehehe. Bentar aja sih paling. Mama. Biasa mencari tempat buat tidur. Welcome Dan. Hehehe. Ini baru setengah jalan lagian. Kayaknya Kola mau nyelesain sampai yang part 1 ini sampai chapter ketiganya. Hehe. Jadi kayak ya masih lama lah, paling masih sejam mungkin. Kola juga nggak tahu. Karena kan Kola juga kayak ya walaupun yang nonton dikit ataupun apa, kayak ini kan Kola juga baca buat Kola sendiri. Jadi kayak ya lumayan lah. Nontonnya Sherlock Holmes-nya Robert Downey Jr. Kenapa aku mikirnya malah Junior malah Johnson ya? Robert Downey Jr. Sukakah movie-nya yang itu? Kalau udah pernah nonton tapi kayak udah lama gitu. Kayaknya nanti mau nonton lagi deh. Kalau nggak salah movie-nya ada 2. Kemarin kayaknya lihat di Netflix kayak mau rewatch kan. Tapi kalau bingung yang mana yang kalau udah pernah nonton. Jadi kalau belum jadi nonton. Mana ini? Mana ya? It was 6:15 when we left Baker Street, and it still wanted 10 minutes to the hour when we found ourselves in Serpentine Avenue. It was already dusk, and the lamps were just being lighted as we paced up and down in front of Briny Lodge, waiting for the coming of its occupant. The house was just such as I had pictured it from Sherlock Holmes' succinct description. The locality appeared to be less private than I expected. On the contrary, for a small street in a quiet neighborhood, it was remarkably animated. There was a group of shabbily dressed men smoking and laughing in a corner, a scissors grinder with his wheel, 2 guardsmen who were flirting with a nurse girl, and several well-dressed young men who were lounging up and down with cigars in their mouths. You see, remarked Holmes, as we paced to and from in front of the house, this marriage rather simplifies matters. The photograph becomes a double-edged weapon now. Chances are that she will be as averse to its being seen by Mr. Godfrey Norton as our client is to its coming to the eyes of his princess. Now the question is, where are we to find the photograph? Where indeed? It is most unlikely that she carries it about with her. It is cabinet size, too large for easy concealment about a woman's dress. She knows that the king is capable of having her waylaid and searched. The attempts of the sort have already been made. We may take it then that she doesn't carry it about with her. Jadi emang ternyata yang kayaknya yang pernikahan palsu yang di gereja itu juga untuk bikin makin ngeblackmail si raja yang ngajuin kasusnya ke Holmes buat ngeblackmail lagi. Tapi kan mereka lagi nyari kan gimana caranya buat ngambil fotonya. Tapi kalau mereka mikirnya gini, si Irene Adler ini kan pintar, dia tuh tahu kayak si raja ini udah bisa bikin dia digeledah, udah dicoba gitu digeledah 2-3 kali kan. Jadi kemungkinan si Irene Adler ini nggak ngebawa fotonya, tapi fotonya disimpan entah di mana gitu. Nah ini mereka lagi mikir nih, kira-kira ditaruh di mana ya? Apa ini? Hai Chocolate, hai Adrian, halo Adrian. Terima kasih sudah mampir. Nggak sengaja sering denger Sherlock Holmes gara-gara hasil gabut nyari film-film di Netflix. Sama FGO juga. Oh, kok dia tahu Sherlock Holmes baru kah hitungannya? Soalnya kan Sherlock Holmes terkenalnya udah dari dulu banget. Kayak kalau sih taunya gitu, kayak udah legendaris gitu loh ceritanya Sherlock Holmes. Kayak dia tuh mungkin detektif yang paling ikonik kali ya. Kayak kalau di dunia gitu ceritanya minimal. Makanya sering dibikin adaptasi film segala macam kan. Masih. Ayo kita baca lagi. Where then? Her banker or her lawyer? There is that double possibility. But I am inclined to think neither. Women are naturally secretive, and they like to do their own secreting. Why should she hand it over to anyone else? She could trust her own guardianship, but she couldn't tell what indirect or political influence it might be brought to bear upon a businessman. Besides, remember that she had resolved to use it within a few days. It must be where she can lay her hands upon it. It must be in her own house. Jadi kalau dari deduksi mereka nggak mungkin dia dikasih ke orang, pasti di rumah gitu, pasti di rumahnya dia. But it has twice been burgled. Udah di apa sih, rumahnya udah kayak diterobos 2 kali. Ini apa ya? Bukan diterobos sih, tapi kayak digeledah. Tapi geledah kan kalau geledah pakai sama polisi kan. Ini bukan sama polisi, kayak diobrak-abrik, rumahnya itu udah diobrak-abrik 2 kali gitu. They didn't know how to look. But how will you look? I will not look. What then? I'll get her to show me, but she will refuse. She will not be able to. But I hear the rumble of wheels. It is her carriage now. Carry out my orders to the letter. Oh, jadi ini Adlernya udah mulai nyampe ke rumah ini. As he spoke of the gleam on the sidelights of a carriage came around the curve of the avenue. It was a smart little landau which rattled up to the door of Bryony Lodge. As it pulled up, one of the living men at the corner dashed forward to open the door in the hope of earning a copper, but was elbowed away by another loafer who had rushed up with the same intention. Bentar, kalian tuh bukain pintu kereta, kenapa rebutan? Bukannya aturan udah ada satu-satu, ini rebutan tentang cantik nih, aduh. A fierce quarrel broke out, which was increased by the 2 guardsmen who took sides with one of the loungers, and by the scissors grinder who was equally hot upon the other side. Bentar, ini malah berantem buat bukain pintu mobil aja kok berantem. Terus orang yang nonton malah ikut-ikutan bikin berantem, bikin rame. Ini gimana? Bentar, ini chaotic banget. Was equally hot upon the other side. A blow was struck, and in an instant, the lady who had stepped from her carriage was the center of a little knot of flushed and struggling men who struck savagely at each other with their fists and sticks. Wow, ini cinematic sekali ya, walaupun sangat memeable ini. Holmes dashed into the crowd to protect the lady, but just as he reached her, he gave a cry and dropped to the ground, with the blood running freely down his face. What? Bentar, jadi Holmes pura-pura ngelindungin Miss Adler, tapi terus ada darah keluar dari kepalanya. Bentar, Holmes, why are you so dramatic? Halo, kenapa kamu dramatis banget sih? Gimana sih? At his fall, the guardsmen took to their heels in one direction, and the loungers in the other, while a number of better-dressed people who had watched the scuffle without taking part in it crowded in to help the lady and to attend to the injured man. Irene Adler, as I will still call her, had hurried up the steps, but she stood at the top with her superb figure outlined against the lights of the hall, looking back into the street. Aduh, ini orang-orang sini bener-bener ngesim Miss Irene Adler ya ini kayaknya. Aduh, memang ya ini. Aduh, buka pintu aja bikin kericuhan gini. Is the poor gentleman much hurt? She asked. He is dead. Hah? Bentar. Kok mati? Bukan lah, belum mati lah tuh lah. He is dead, cried several voices. No, there's life in him, shouted another. But he'll be gone before you can get him to hospital. Jadi mereka debat ini, apakah Holmesnya lagi masih hidup kah? Apakah belum? Jadi mereka udah rusuh-rusuh, ricu-ricu, kayak malah sekarang ngedebatin apakah si Sherlock ini masih hidup apa enggak. He's a brave fellow, said the woman. He would have had a lady's purse and watch it. Oh, he would have had a lady's purse and watch if it hadn't been for him. They were a gang, and a rough one too. He's breathing now. Oh, jadi yang rebutan ngebuka pintu tuh kayaknya maling kayaknya ternyata. He can't lie in the street. Let me bring him in, ma'am. Surely. Bring him into the sitting room. There's a comfortable sofa. This way, please. Apa ini? Iya sih, ikonik banget. Tapi aku baru kepincutnya sekarang-sekarang. Oh, iya sih, wajar sih. Kan soalnya nggak semua orang juga kayak suka nontonin detektif. Apalagi kayak detektif tuh kayak nggak semuanya vibe-nya cocok gitu. Kayak kita kalaupun suka cerita detektif, kadang-kadang ada kayak style yang kita prefer sendiri. Kayak aku misalnya sampai sekarang kayaknya masih belum bisa kepincut yang Poirot, bacanya aku nggak tahu apa. Kayak kalau detektif Poirot aku masih belum kepincut. Paling baru ini, sama mungkin mau nyoba baca Agatha Christie juga nanti. Ya. Sip, lanjutin mamen. Mana ya? Slowly and solemnly he was borne into Brandon Lodge and laid out in the principal room, while I still observed the proceedings from my post by the window. The lamps had been lit, but the blinds had not been drawn, so that I could see Holmes as he lay up on the couch. I do not know whether he was seized with compunction at that moment for the part he was playing, but I know that I never felt more heartily ashamed of myself in my life than when I saw the beautiful creature against whom I was conspiring, or the grace and kindness with which she waited upon the injured man. Jadi si Watson-nya nggak mau. Kenapa dia kerja sama si Watson? Karena kelihatannya kenapa dia kerja sama Holmes? Karena kelihatannya Miss Adler ini baik gitu, cantik, baik gitu, anggun. And yet it will be the blackest treachery to Holmes to draw back now from the part which he had entrusted to me. Iya, tapi dia nggak berani, nggak tega gitu ngehianatin Holmes karena dia udah janji bakalan ngelakuin partnya dia di skenario ini. I hardened my heart and took the smoke rocket from under my ulster. After all, I thought, we are not injuring her. We are but preventing her from injuring another. Holmes had sat up upon the couch, and I saw him motion like a man who is in need of air. Of air, not hair. Of air. A maid rushed across and threw open the window. At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand, and at the signal, I tossed my rocket into the room with a cry of fire. The word was no sooner out of my mouth than the whole crowd of spectators, well dressed and ill, gentlemen, ostlers, and servant maids joined in a general shriek of fire. The clouds of smoke curled through the room and out at the open window. I caught a glimpse of rushing figures, and a moment later the voice of Holmes from within, assuring them that it was a false alarm. Slipping through the shouting crowd, I made my way to the corner of the street, and in 10 minutes was rejoiced to find my friend's arm in mine, and to get away from the scene of uproar. He walked swiftly and in silence for some few minutes, until we had turned down one of the quiet streets which lead towards the Edgware Road. Jadi abis udah dirawat sama si Adler, dia tuh si Holmesnya kabur terus kayak rendezvous kayak ketemuan lagi sama si Watson, hand arm in arm. Jadi mereka gandengan lengan nih. Aduh, kok lucu sih, kenapa bromance banget? Why do you get so bromance? Is it a thing back then? Okay, you did it very nicely, Doctor, he remarked. Nothing could have been better. It's all right. You have the photograph? I know where it is. Now how did you find out? She showed me as I told you she would. I am still in the dark. I do not wish to make a mystery, said he, laughing. The matter was perfectly simple. You, of course, saw that everyone in the street was an accomplice. They were all engaged for the evening. I guessed as much. Then, when the row broke out, I had a little moist red paint in the palm of my hand. I rushed forward, fell down, clapped my hand to my face, and became a piteous spectacle. It is an old trick. That also I could fathom. Then they carried me in. She was bound to have me in. What else could she do? And into her sitting room, which was the very room which I suspected. It lay between that and her bedroom, and I was determined to see which. They laid me on a couch. I motioned for air. They were compelled to open the window and you had your chance. How did that help you? It was all important. When a woman thinks that her house is on fire, her instinct is at once to rush to the thing which she values most. It is a perfectly overpowering impulse, and I have more than once taken advantage of it. In the case of the Darlington substitution scandal, it was of use to me, and also in the Arnsworth Castle business. A married woman grabs at her baby. An unmarried one reached for her jello box. Now it was clear to me that Our Lady of today had nothing in the house more precious to her than what we are in quest of. She would rush to secure it. The alarm of fire was admirably done. The smoke and shouting were enough to shake nerves of steel. She responded beautifully. The photograph is in a recess behind the sliding panel, just above the right bell pull. She was there in an instant, and I caught a glimpse of it as she drew it out. Jadi ternyata caranya Holmes itu narik si Adler, maksudnya kayak cara Holmes itu ngetahuin di mana Adler naruh fotonya, itu adalah dengan bikin si Adler panik. Jadi kan dia pura-pura sakit nih, pura-pura ngap-ngap gitu lah gitu kan. Terus waktu dia goler di sofa, dia bilang dia butuh udara, makanya maidnya itu ngebukain jendela. Nah disitulah Watson melempar yang tadi yang bikin kayak api gitu, percikan api. Terus kan orang-orang di sekitar itu ternyata yang di sekitaran rumahnya Adler ternyata tuh kayak semacam teman-temannya si Holmes, entah bayaran atau temen, ya pokoknya temen gitu lah kan, yang ngebantu skenario ini. Nah mereka teriak kebakaran. Nah di situ Adler panik, percaya bahwa bakalan jadi kebakaran atau emang udah kebakaran gitu kan. Di situ karena dia itu wanita yang belum menikah, dia kan kalau orang menikah yang diselamatkan pertama bayi, kalau yang belum menikah biasanya kotak perhiasan atau yang paling berharga. Nah yang dia ambil langsung adalah fotonya yang ada di sekitaran ruangan itu, di dekat ruangan yang tempat si Holmes itu tadi ditaruh di sofa gitu. When I cried out that it was a false alarm, she replaced it, glanced at the rocket, rushed from the room, and I have not seen her since. I rose and, making my excuses, escaped from the house. I hesitated whether to attempt to secure the photograph at once, but the coachman had come in, and as he was watching me narrowly, it seemed safer to wait. A little over precipitance, my Renault. Jadi tadinya Holmes itu bingung apa mau ambil fotonya aja langsung, tapi karena udah ada yang ngawasin jadinya kayaknya dia mau main aman, jadi dia pergi gitu, kembali keluar. And now I ask, ini btw I-nya itu Watson ya, jadi dari sudut pandangnya Watson. Our quest is practically finished. I shall call with the king tomorrow, and with you if you care to come with us. We will be shown into the sitting room to wait for the lady, but it is probable that when she comes she may find neither us nor the photograph. It might be a satisfaction to His Majesty to regain it with his own hands. And when will you call? At 8 in the morning. She will not be up, so that we shall have a clear field. Besides, we must be prompt, for this marriage may mean a complete change in her life and habits. I must wire to the king without delay. We had reached Baker Street and had stopped at the door. He was searching his pockets for the key when someone passing said, "Good night, Mr. Sherlock Holmes." There were several people on the pavement at the time, but the greeting appeared to come from a slim youth, an announcer who had hurried by. "I've heard that voice before," said Holmes, staring down the dimly lit street. "Now I wonder who the deuce that could have been." Jadi waktu mereka balik ke tempatnya Holmes, ada yang nyapa nih. Tapi siapa ya? Bentar ya, break dulu. Kalau mau minum dulu kayaknya. Kalau mau minum, sabar ya guys. Coba mata. Ini mic-nya kalau mute dulu deh, biar nggak geretak-gerak. Coba Ya halo. Sorry kalau kepala kola kayak goyang-goyang itu, tadi lagi get back to position, lagi nyender lagi di kasur. Contoh. Hah? Iya, ini baru chapter 3. Kayak apa namanya? Kayak kan apa namanya ya? Kita bacanya kan pelan-pelan gitu, sambil commentating. Biar makanya kalau nonton bacanya bareng kalian biar bisa dikomentarin. So iya Rium. Suaranya nggak ada, so tadi kalau baru balik kalau tadi lagi dari WC. Hehehe. Udah ada kan suaranya? Udah ada kan ya? Ya. Iya. Aku baru balik soalnya. Ya, jadi tadi tuh membaca chapter 1 sampai chapter 2 kan. Ini part satunya. Jadi kan kalau Sherlock Holmes itu ada kayak per kasus dia tuh. Ceritanya kayak per kasus. Ini kan kayak di mana namanya? Di aplikasi Kola yang aplikasi readernya kan ada part 1 sampai part 12. Nah, ini kasus pertamanya itu ada 3 chapter. Ini chapter terakhir. Nah, yang stream ini kita karena chapternya cuma ada 3, jadi kayaknya stream ini ya sampai sekalian dihabisin aja sampai chapter yang 3 ini selesai. Hehe. Oke, kalau udah minum, kalau udah ke toilet, ya kita lanjut. Tadi itu kalau sebenarnya bukan hampir apa udah kayak seret gitu dah, kayak apa ya? Kayak panas dalam apa ya? Kalau yang pada baru datang atau pada baru balik, hehehe. Di sini kita baca cerita detektif, yaitu Sherlock Holmes. Hehehe. Kalau paling suka detektif apa ya? Kalau nggak ada detektif favorit atau gimana sih, tapi dan again cerita detektif itu yang ikonik kayak masih dikit gitu kan, paling Conan, Poirot, Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christie. Kalau misalnya kalian ada cerita-cerita detektif lainnya kalian tahu, kalian boleh chat Kola atau mention Kola biar Kola juga punya tontonan lebih buat nanti selanjutnya. Karena kalau Kola sekarang biasanya asupan misteri-misterinya atau kayak detektifannya tuh biasanya cuma dari serial investigasi yang kayak di Netflix, kayak CIS, NCSI gitu kan, kayak investigasi TKP gitu. Tapi kalau misalnya kayak baca yang kasus-kasus detektif atau ceritanya, Kola nggak punya banyak referensi sendiri gitu sih, jadi sayang. Bentar, nih kepalanya Kola benerin dulu. Ini setupnya serba salah. Kalau tuh sebenarnya ngeset HP itu cuma pakai kawat live stream gitu loh, dijepit kursi kursi Citose, tapi kursi Citose nggak, yang kursi bimbel lah gitu. Oke. Ayo kita mulai lagi. Chapter 3. I slept at Baker Street that night, and we were engaged upon our toast and coffee in the morning when the King of Bohemia rushed into the room. "You have really got it," he cried, grasping Sherlock Holmes by either shoulder and looking eagerly into his face. "Not yet." "But you have hopes?" "I have hopes." "Then come, I am all impatience to begin." "You must have a cab." "No, my brougham is waiting." "Then that will simplify matters." We descended and started off once more for Briny Lodge. "Irene Adler is married," remarked Holmes. "Married? When?" "Yesterday. But to whom?" "To an English lawyer named Norton." "But she couldn't love him." "I am in hopes that she does." "And why in hopes?" "Because it would spare your majesty of fear of future annoyance. If the lady loves her husband, she doesn't love your majesty. If she does not love your majesty, there is no reason why she should interfere with your majesty's plan." "It is true, and yet, well, I wish she had been of my own station. What a queen she would have made." He relapsed into a moody silence, which wasn't broken until we drew up in Serpentine Avenue. The door of Briny Lodge was open, and an elderly woman stood upon the steps. She watched us with a sardonic eye as we stepped from the brougham. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I believe," said she. "I am Mr. Holmes," answered my companion, looking at her with a questioning and rather startled gaze. "Indeed, my mistress told me that you were likely to call. She left this morning with her husband by the 5:15 train from Charing Cross for the continent. What? Sherlock Holmes staggered back, white with chagrin and surprise. Do you mean that she has left England? Never to return. And the papers? Asked the king hoarsely. All is lost. We shall see. He pushed past the servant and rushed into the drawing room, followed by the king and myself. The furniture was scattered about in every direction, with dismantled shelves and open drawers, as if the lady had hurriedly ransacked them before her flight. Holmes rushed at the bell-pull, tore back a small sliding shutter, and plunging in his hand, pulled out a photograph and a letter. The photograph was of Irene Adler herself, in evening dress. The letter was superscribed to Sherlock Holmes, asked to be left till called for. My friend tore it open and we all three read it together. It was dated at midnight of the preceding night and ran in this way. My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, you really did it very well. You took me in completely. Until after the alarm of fire, I had not a suspicion. But then, when I found how I had betrayed myself, I began to think. I had been warned against 2 months ago. I had been told that if the king employed an agent, it would certainly be you. And your address had been given to me. Had been given to me? Jadi ini guys, kan nih dari buku asli. Kadang-kadang ada kata-kata atau huruf yang hilang kayaknya. Maybe, I don't know. Ini bahasa Inggris lama juga sih. Jadi Kola juga nggak sefamiliar itu sebenarnya. Tapi ya more or less ya ngerti lah gitu kan. Yet with all this, you made me reveal what you wanted to know. Even after I became suspicious, I found it hard to think evil of such a dear, kind old clergyman. But you know, I have been trained as an actress myself. Male costume is nothing new to me. I often take advantage of the freedom which it gives. I sent John, the coachman, to watch you, ran upstairs, got into my walking clothes, as I call them, and came down just as you departed. Jadi si Adler ini tahu kalau misalnya si Holmes itu lagi ngintai dia. Nah di sini mungkin Irene Adler itu mungkin agak terpana juga atau gimana, dia ninggalin surat dengan foto dia di gaun malam untuk si Holmes. Di situ dia bilang bahwa awalnya dia nggak curiga gitu, sampai akhirnya dia mulai berpikir gitu kan. Waktu udah tenang dia berpikir lagi. Dia udah dikasih tahu, udah diwanti-wanti katanya dari beberapa bulan lalu tuh udah ada yang wanti dia. Kalau misalnya si raja itu ngirim agen, pasti orangnya dia, si Holmes gitu kan. Tapi terus walaupun dia inget kayak gitu, dia bingung juga mau ngecurigain si orang yang masuk rumah dia nggak ya. Soalnya kalau nggak salah si Holmes ini lagi pakai baju ulama gitu kan. Tapi terus dia ingat karena si Miss Adler ini kan juga aktris ya. Dia udah belajar jadi aktris, udah biasa acting juga. Barulah dia ingat, oh iya ya, bisa jadi ini Holmes gitu kan. Walaupun sepandai apapun actingnya si Holmes. Soalnya si Adler ini udah sering nyamar pakai baju cowok untuk mendapatkan kebebasan gitu kan. Kayak kalau misalnya kita, terutama untuk di tahun itu kan, di tahun-tahun kayak gitu, kalau cewek mau keliaran kan lebih enak kalau misalnya pakai penampilan kayak cowok gitu kan. Waduh, bentar. Ini ring, HP ku kesenggol. Hehehe. Oke. Beneran lagi. Oke, begini. Oke. Oke, ada siapa aja nih? Colabanwaa everyone. Banyak juga yang nonton ya. Pada betah ya. Iya, ganbate Mr. Holmes. Kalau aku sih ganbatenya bukan Mr. Holmes ya. Saya ganbatenya ke Watson-nya. Semoga saya kayak sabar banget Watson-nya. Kayak ini Holmes ini ngaco begini. Jadi kayak ganbate Watson-san. Bukan Watson Apex ya. Walaupun Watson Apex cantik kalau Watson Apex. Ganbate Watson-san. Ini Holmes-nya ngaco-ngaco begini. Mana lagi kena kasusnya sama Miss Irene Adler pula kan. Oke, kita lanjut. as I called them and came down just as you departed. Well, I followed you to your door and so made sure that I was really an object of interest to the celebrated Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Then I, rather imprudently, wished you good night and started for the temple to see my husband. We both thought the best resource was flight when pursued by so formidable an antagonist, so you will find the nest empty when you call tomorrow. As to the photograph, your client might rest in peace. I love and am loved by a better man than he. The king may do what he will without hindrance from one who he has cruelly wronged. I keep it only to safeguard myself and to preserve a weapon which will always secure me from any steps which he might take in the future. I leave a photograph which he might care to possess, and I remain, dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, very truly yours, Irene Norton Nee Adler. Jadi di sini Irene bilang kayak apa namanya? Setelah udah tahu dia diintai Sherlock Holmes, dia sama suaminya yang baru ini kayak mikir, kayaknya kalau kayak gini paling efektif kalau mau lari itu ya udah kita harus terbang, harus naik pesawat gitu. Kayak mereka langsung terbang gitu. Biar waktu mereka datang, waktu Watson sama Holmes datang, rumahnya Adler udah kosong, gitu kan? Nah, sementara tentang foto yang ingin diambil sama si rajanya ini, alamak, kepala, tolonglah, jangan gerak-gerak aneh-aneh. Oke. Oke, gini nggak apa-apa kali ya? Kenapa kamu? Nah, kayaknya gini nggak apa-apa. Oke. Sementara dengan foto yang dicari si rajanya, katanya Adler, tenang aja. Si Irene Adler ini nggak mau ngapa-ngapain gitu, karena dia udah sama suami yang sekarang, dia suka suaminya yang sekarang, cinta suaminya yang sekarang, jadi dia nggak bakalan ya ngapa-ngapain lagi, maksudnya dia nggak bakalan blackmail si rajanya lagi. Fotonya itu cuma kayak semacam jaminan biar kalau misalnya dia diancem atau dia bakal dibunuh atau ya pokoknya kalau misalnya ada orang yang berani ngancem dia, jaminannya foto itu gitu. Tapi selain itu si Irene Adler ini nggak ada niat apa-apa lagi gitu. Memang ini Irene Adler ini kayak one step ahead dari si Mr. Holmes ya. Ya begitulah pokoknya. Jadi di situ si Adler jelasin ini udah nggak kenapa-napa kok, udah tenang aja kalau soal ini. Alamak, ini kenapa let me see. Sorry. Ini kayak trackingnya lagi error nih. Kelihatan ya, nggak apa-apa lah ya. What a woman! Oh, what a woman! Cried the King of Bohemia, when we had all three read his epistle. Did I not tell you how quick and resolute she was? Would she not have made an admirable queen? Is it not a pity that she was not on my level? Ini ternyata rajanya bucin juga. Jadi walaupun dia khawatir si Adler ini bakalan ngancam-ngancam dia, itu sebenarnya masih suka gitu, masih tertarik gitu. Sayangnya si Adlernya ini nggak dalam levelnya dia, maksudnya kayak beda kasta gitu loh. Sayangnya beda kasta gitu. Tapi buat dia tuh kayak dia tuh kagum sama Miss Irene Adlernya ini. Wah ini kok wanita ini jago banget gitu, kayak wanita ini kok hebat banget. Sayangnya dia nggak sekasta sama aku. Padahal kalau jadi ratu keren banget gitu menurutnya si rajanya ini gitu. Justru si raja menyayangkan kenapa dia nggak bisa jadi ratu gitu. From what I have seen of the lady, she seems indeed to be on a very different level to your majesty, said Holmes coldly. I am sorry that I have not been able to bring your majesty's business to a more successful conclusion. Jadi siapa namanya si Holmes ini mengiyakan, iya si Adler ini memang tidak sekasta, tidak selevel sama kamu. Tapi kalau nganggapnya di sini kayaknya Holmes itu lagi nyindir si rajanya gitu. Kayaknya maksudnya si Irene Adlernya kepinteran buat si rajanya gitu. Kayaknya sih gitu maksudnya si Holmes, kan Holmes itu kan sarkastik banget kan. Okay. On the contrary, my dear sir, cried the king, nothing could be more successful. I know that her word is inviolate. The photograph is now as safe as if it were in the fire. I am glad to hear your majesty say so. I am immensely indebted to you. Pray tell me in what way I can reward you. This ring," he slipped an emerald snake ring from his finger and held it out upon the palm of his hand. "Your majesty has something which I should value even more highly," said Holmes. "You have but to name it. This photograph." The king stared at him in amazement. "Irene's photograph," he cried. "Certainly, if you wish it." "I thank your majesty. Then there is no more to be done in the matter. I have the honor to wish you a very good morning." He bowed, and turning away without observing the hand which the king had stretched out to him, he set off in my company for his chambers. And that was how a great scandal threatened to affect the kingdom of Bohemia, and how the best plans of Mr. Sherlock Holmes were beaten by a woman's wit. He used to make a merry over the cleverness of women, but I have not heard him do it of late. And when he speaks of Irene Adler, or when he refers to her photograph, it is always under the honorable title of the woman. Kayaknya ini, oh ya, ini udah tamat. Yay. Jadi si rajanya tuh bingung mau ngasih apa gitu kan. Awalnya mau ditawarin cincin emerald gitu kan. Tapi ternyata yang lebih diinginkan oleh yang lebih diinginkan oleh Sherlock Holmes adalah fotonya si Irene Adler yang ada barengan surat yang ngejelasin kenapa dia pergi dan tentang foto yang ngasih fotonya itu. Ternyata si Sherlock Holmes lebih suka itu. Tidak disangka ya. Nah, terus dari sisinya si Watson, dari sudut pandangnya Watson, dari situlah kayak akhirnya tiap kali ngomongin Irene Adler pasti ada julukannya, bilangnya the woman, si wanita, kayak ada gelarnya itu, ada the-nya, jadi si gitu, kayak ini wanita hebat gitu. Jadi tiap kali setelah kejadian itu, setiap kali si Sherlock Holmes ini ngebahas Irene Adler pasti nyebutnya the woman gitu, nge-addressnya the woman ya. Jadi itulah akhir dari part satunya The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Part satunya adalah A Scandal in Bohemia ya. Akhirnya udah tamat. Makasih yang udah stay tune. Kola baca chatnya dulu deh sebelum Kola undur diri. Watson, very ganbatte to you. Yeah, very ganbatte. Sabar banget aslian Watson tuh sama sama Holmes ya. Kalau nonton yang versinya BBC lebih sabar lagi, itu kayaknya lebih sadis sih, lebih sosiopat itu Sherlock Holmes ya, kayak bener-bener kayak aduh ngebebanin banget ya ampun, kayak Watson tuh capek banget ngurusnya kan. Malam Kola, iya malam Koko, aduh Koko, ini kenapa malah jadi rame waktu Kola udah mau selesai stream ini. Halo semuanya, halo semua yang lagi datang, yang lagi nonton. Apa kabar? Colabanwaa. Ini Kola baru aja selesai nonton soalnya, kayak udah selesai nonton tadi tuh, kayak apa ya? Udah part 3-nya gimana tadi ya? Ini tuh udah sampai chapter 3. Mungkin kalau nanti selanjutnya bikin reading stream lagi baru bakal baca apa ini kasusnya. The Red-Headed League. The Red-Headed League. Mungkin selanjutnya nanti bakalan baca yang part 2 ini. Tapi kalau untuk yang sekarang kita udah selesai baca yang A Scandal in Bohemia. Terima kasih yang sudah nonton. Terima kasih yang sudah traktir. Lagi ini. Kamu juga ratu di hatiku. Aduh, Alexei bisa aja sih. Aduh, memang ya buayanya tolong ya guys. Udah malam ini. Telat gak nih? Sayangnya telat. Ini udah mau selesai, Biasanya kan kalau late night stream pasti jam 10 atau jam 11 soalnya. Ini kebetulan chapter 3-nya udah selesai. Nanti selanjutnya kalau bikin reading stream lagi lanjut chapter 2. Nah aja, kalau bakal bikin lagi kok reading stream. Tapi kalau misalnya kalian mau baca bareng Kola, bisa kok baca aja nanti kalau udah ada arsipnya udah ke-upload. Kalau stream yang ini arsipnya udah ke up itu aja baca aja sambil kan Kola juga kayak ngetranslasiin per part gitu sekilas. Kalau misalnya agak bingung bacanya, soalnya juga baca bahasa Inggrisnya agak bahasa Inggris lama, mungkin agak rempong terjemahinnya gitu. Iya, dadah dan ot sekolah. Dah pagi kakola, masa? Kayak belum. Ups. Iya bener, udah jam 1:30. Ya udah guys, ot sekolah. Siapa aja ini yang lagi nonton, siapa aja sih? Oh my god, jangan-jangan pada ketiduran. Ya nggak apa-apa sih kalau ketiduran juga, nggak apa-apa, justru kalau seneng kan ini emang streamnya buat orang-orang biar bisa ketiduran, biar bisa relax. Ya udah deh kalau gitu semuanya, makasih yang udah datang ya, terima kasih. Dan untuk kalian, kalau mungkin bakalan apa ya, kagok gitu, nggak mungkin kalau bakalan nggak semangat dan mungkin takut-takutan kalau mau stream. Makanya kalau seneng banget kalau misalnya kalian selalu datang ke streamnya Kola. Thanks a lot, thanks everyone. Masuk sekolah, bye guys. Rest well ya, oyasumi. Bye bye.